Welcome to the Strategy Toolbox, the On Strategy webinar series.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining to this session. Well, the new normal, supply chain disruption for the new normal. Actually, situation that we are all experiencing on personal basis, on business basis. All of us have been impacted by this COVID-19 situation. And what I'm going to do now is to share some thoughts around supply chain and around how we can fill the gap between execution and strategy that frequently occurs in many situations. And actually, what you will see at the end of my presentation is that I might be disrupting the classic concept of strategic planning based on my experience and based on the recent developments that I have been participating. Here is the agenda that I'm suggesting for you. First of all, a couple of reflections about our new reality, then talk about supply chain disruption, then some thoughts about supply chain 4.0, and then some remarks about closing the gap between strategy and execution, as I said. Our new reality. Our new reality has a name, and the name is COVID-19. All of us, as I said, we have experienced the impact of this terrible situation, unexpected situation that we have lived all around the world. Of course, I mean, I don't need to tell you about all the personal impact of this, but I would just want to highlight the economic impact. And I want to highlight this based on a very interesting publication from Deloitte from March 2020 that highlights three main impacts. Of course, the direct impact on the production, the impact on the financial sector and the financial firms, the financial markets, and of course, and this is what I want to highlight, the impact on the supply chain and the market disruption. How this is not going to be impacted if many of the supply sources were practically shut down all around the world, breaking the value chains, breaking the supply chains, breaking the global flows of products. Of course, this has had a direct impact on the economic situation. The complete lockdown of the economy is definitely having strong implications overall the countries. And I just wanted to illustrate this with this outlook from the International Monetary Fund. It's not strange for all of us that all the economies practically in the world are suffering a strong reduction on the GDP growth. This is probably the most severe economic crisis that we are going to experience, probably worse than the crisis from the Great Depression in 1929, 1930. And of course, even deeper and higher than the economic shutdown that we had with the financial crisis in 2008, 2009. You can see here some of the, I would say, projections from the International Monetary Fund. But at the end of the day, I mean, some of the analysts, some of the financial institutions have even forecasted reductions of 2 digits in some of the main economies in the world. Really challenging situation for all of us. And of course, the impact has been different in multiple industries. Of course, looking at this graph, big impact, of course, in the retail industry, the hospitality industry, tourism, travel, airlines. You can see the big impact on hotels that have been practically shut down, airlines that have all their fleets of airplanes practically parked in most of the airports, strong upcoming regulations that we are going to face when travel reconvenes. In some other sectors that, of course, related to trying to fight this situation, have been still active and with some opportunities, such as pharma and medicine. Some of the industries reopening now, for example, the automotive industry in the US and Mexico, still with a lot of challenges, but a lot of impact, and definitely the tourism, travel, airlines, and retail have been really badly hit by this situation. And of course, the impact of the supply chain has been really, really strong. Let's talk about the disruption that this overall situation has caused into this specific domain area. According to Accenture, of course, companies have been completely suffering the disruption of the supply chain, as I said, in many cases because the supply sources have been shut down, in others because the usual routes of transportation have been affected, customs clearance, entry ports, and the overall processes also have been impacted by the social distancing, I would say, regulations and requirements that we have implemented all around the world. And in many cases also some of the logistics operators and operators in the manufacturing plants have been affected by, let's say, getting sick with the COVID-19, with some unfortunate consequences in many cases. However, what Accenture is highlighting here, and I think is very, very important, is that under this situation, companies have still an opportunity, and the great opportunity is in terms of reshaping their supply chain's operating model to increase effectiveness, efficiency, and maybe this concept of resilience. And by that, resilience stands for, in my opinion, kind of overcoming situations under an unfavorable business environment, a big opportunity to come back, a big opportunity to address the challenges and create new opportunities. And this is probably some of the main ideas that I would like to use as a foundation of the conclusion that I will share at the end of the presentation. Big opportunity to start from supply chain in order to probably reevaluate our whole business model. And just going into a little bit of more detail, as I said, I mean, this pandemic has had major impact on the supply chain, for example, in the exchange of goods throughout the world, in terms of manufacturers that rely on labor-intensive to be disrupted by social distancing requirements, and maybe some of the manufacturers that have been impacted on the ability to have their product delivered because some of the operators of different modes of transportation, the workers at the distribution facilities, even the workers at the manufacturing plants have been infected by COVID-19. All these kind of disruptions. MIT, the Sloan School of Business of Massachusetts Institute of Technology, made a publication in mid-March this year, and very interesting, they set 6 steps in order to handle this supply chain disruption that is occurring all around the world. And some of these 6 steps are the following. They said, well, first of all, you need to set up an emergency management center. This is an unusual situation. This is completely unexpected. This needs to be addressed in a very specific manner. Second, speak with one voice, meaning we need to be consistent, we need to be solid, and we need to be very careful about the communication channels with all ecosystem, with our suppliers, with our stakeholders, with our partners, with our customers, with our workers, a single voice needs to be listened. There is no room for multiple interpretations, and as you know, unfortunately, this has been the case not only in situations of companies, but also in situations of countries, where different probably voices from different parts of a government have different interpretations of what needs to be done. Swim in your own lane. This is the third suggestion from MIT to handle supply chain disruption. And I want to get back to that probably further into my presentation, because this is very, very important. I mean, there is no room for misinterpretations or different criteria when senior level makes one statement and probably at the operational execution level we are doing something different. So we are going to talk about that. Map your supply chain and keep buying products. Visibility is one of the main challenges now. And of course, with all these changes, with all this disruption, we need to be able to manage the multiple changes and the frequent changes that we are having in our supply chain, and have the capability to map it up is not just important today, but it's critical. Prepare to manage customer demand. We are living in an uncertain environment, and really we are kind of very concerned about what is coming next. What is going to be the overall situation of the economy, of the market after the COVID-19 crisis, if that is the case, because as you can see in the news today, yesterday, there is some situations of rebounds in some countries. So how are we going to be preparing to manage our customer expectations? How are we going to be prepared to manage demand? Big implication in the supply chain. And of course, build an overall plan for recovery to kind of reintegrate our workers, our employees, to reinstate processes, and to be able to adopt probably the operational and technological capabilities that we need. Very important 6 steps highlighted by MIT. Let me share with you quickly some reflections about the concept of supply chain 4.0. Because supply chain 4.0 stands for the digital transformation that supply chain needs to have. Okay, the digital transformation where all the different supply chain processes are evolving to. What do I mean by that? First of all, a quick overview about the different challenges that we are experiencing and that are present even more today than ever before. The capacity storage, the supply bottlenecks, quarantines, IT blackouts, machine breakdown, availability of personnel. If you see, I mean, all these symptoms have been enhanced by the crisis of the COVID-19. What I would call is that supply chain is in the middle of this VUCA environment that many authors have highlighted from years ago, but I think it's present even more today than ever before. This environment of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And if you apply these 4 VUCA principles into every of these kind of symptoms that I'm highlighting here, this is a good source from the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, are definitely present, as I said, more today than ever. And what is here? What is next in supply chain, and what do we need to be focusing on? At the end of the day, we need to focus on what supply chain 4.0 is, and it is related to the Internet of Things, and this is related to automation. We know by fact that companies have different capabilities to adopt this type of concepts. Countries have different capabilities and different infrastructure to support these kind of new initiatives, but that is precisely where the alignment between execution and strategy comes into place. In order to fully assess what is the real situation of every single company, in order to adopt these new trends, these new models, these new ways of doing supply chain, that at the end of the day, with the global integration that we have in the world, are going to be present in your business, in your world, and are going to be required at some point. You can see, I mean, now we are talking about drones. We are talking about intelligent shelves. We are talking about people using augmented reality and virtual reality to manage processes, intelligent forklifts, intelligent boxes where you can definitely track products. So we need to fully understand how we can do this in our specific context and with our own capabilities. Why? Because at the end of the day, this digital transformation means that the supply chain management process now need to be flexible and variable. They need to be not deterministic, highly decentralized, with multi-agent control, in most of the cases cloud-based, and situation-specific solutions. I mean, there is no room anymore for kind of cookie-cutter approaches. I mean, this is a world where specificity is taking a high relevance to be successful in business. Let me share with you a couple of examples of, I would say, approaches, solutions, technologies, and what the world, to be honest, is requiring today. Based on the changing conditions, the changing situations that companies are facing, companies are requiring to have supply chain simulation and optimization capabilities. I mean, this is not just anymore an exercise that can be done every quarter, every 6 months, every year. That used to be the case where companies used to probably hire the services from some consulting companies to do so. And it was a valid approach in the past. But today, everything is more accelerated. With the COVID-19 crisis, all the conditions are dramatically changing from one day to another. And companies need to have this kind of simulation capabilities. Why is that? Because your supply chain is constantly being evaluated. You now probably are wondering about many of these topics more often than you should. For example, how much to produce and where to store. I mean, if the supply chain that you were using typically was disrupted, so you need to figure out what new ways you have of deploying your products and storing your products. What are the service levels that you need to have, I would say, with the restrictions that you have today? What happens if you change inventory, transportations, or sourcing policies, or sourcing locations based on the shutdown of many sources that we experienced with COVID-19? So there's all these kind of questions that need to be addressed. And of course, there have been in the market different tools. In order to do that, the typical approach is the greenfield analysis, or the network optimization, where you optimize your overall supply chain, where you need to locate your distribution centers, if they are the right number of distribution centers or not, what are the flows of product to perhaps your final customers, or if you are in a manufacturing environment, where those plants need to be sending their products to consolidate and distribute, what are the transportation modes that you can use, etc. And of course, in terms of transportation optimization, also big developments for many years about how to use the best combination of transportation modes, how to optimize the cost of your transportation, etc. But in my opinion, this equation has been incomplete if we don't add a key ingredient, which is simulation. And mainly now with the situation that we are living. Why is that? Because with simulation, and I would call dynamic simulation, you can have a precise end-to-end supply chain design and analysis. This is a complete analysis that would allow you to build different scenarios where you can definitely visualize, identify the implications of making what decision on one end onto another, and therefore to be able to evaluate what is the best option for you. There is also the, I would say, the difference that the classical approaches, they get up to the level of making a great exercise of optimizing your supply chain network, but there is a gap there in terms of probably modeling what's happening inside the four walls, inside the distribution centers. And this is something that definitely is a big addition and needs to be considered under the current situation. Another example is the supply chain tower of control. I will just go very quickly here, but it's a very interesting approach, mainly in terms of the trends that we have seen in supply chain, and specifically in supply chain 4.0, where there is a big need of synchronization and integration of all the processes. So there is a concept of supply chain tower of control, where companies really address the challenge of digital transformation, visibility, I would say dashboards, optimization based on the implementation of different algorithms, and at the end of the day, the maximization of all the different solutions that they have in their to operate their supply chain. So the supply chain tower of control is definitely a way of facing the challenge of synchronization and integration that supply chain 4.0 and digital transformation requires, with all this capability to meet customer demand, to be prepared for the next challenges, and in order to manage your supply chain in a very efficient way. Let me tell you very briefly how this works. First of all, you have all these solutions running your supply chain, you have all these business processes. Different data is produced, and you need to integrate this data in different formats. You do this with an API or multiple APIs in order to do that, so that you can have real-time data access. Once you have that, you start having visibility, end-to-end visibility of your supply chain, from forecasting to delivery of your products. And then you start having some kind of possibilities of having portals, sales and operation planning modules, the distribution of your order management, full visibility of your supply chain synchronized. But on top of that, you also build your control tower when you have machine learning capabilities, in a way, the construction of digital twins that would allow you to simulate and optimize your processes. You have dashboards, you have analytics, and you have real-time notifications and alerts that can help you to enhance your customer service. So this is the complete concept of supply chain tower. Of course, this is not the main topic for today, but there is a lot of discussion that can take place about this platform as a service concept. Finally, how we are closing the gap between strategy and execution. As I said, I am probably disrupting here the classic concept of strategic planning, just because, in my opinion, it's not probably starting with the strategy in order to go and align business processes, but probably now business processes are mandating so that you can reevaluate your business strategies. Why is that? Because, of course, we need to be ready to address the post-COVID-19 situation. So we need to wonder about all this. We need to wonder if we'll have the same reason to be, we'll have the same mission, if our business model is still valid, if our vision is still the one we need, if we need to inspire and contribute to design a new plan, a new strategy for our business, how we need to speed up and align this strategy with execution, and at the end of the day, how we need to fit the cycle without the first baseline plan, so the decision-making process. If we go back to this slide that we presented at the beginning, I told you, swim in your own lane. In this case, fit your strategy from feedback that you are getting from the execution side. Fit your strategy from the success or the different adjustments or evaluations you are making on your supply chain. In a way, the classical approach was, okay, I have my corporate strategy, and then I'm going to define what business processes do I need in order to execute that strategy, and therefore hitting some of these supply chain management processes. But today, today where the world requires quick results, there is no room, there is no time, there is no money, there is no funding for long-term implementation, strategy implementation. We need to address and identify which are the business processes, the supply chain processes that are going to allow us to survive, to succeed under the business, new business environment, and therefore those supply chain management processes might be the source of a reevaluation of our strategy. Just very quickly, this is exactly what I'm meaning here. Supply chains can be a strategy enabler in today's reality. So you start with the supply chain and you gradually start to identify the different areas where you can redefine your corporate strategy and build a supply chain strategy overall. In order to do that, of course, you need to go and have a very clear SWOT analysis based on external factors like political, economical, technological, etc. Identify what is the impact of this exercise in your ecosystem, and of course, internally, the impact on your business processes, on your innovation capabilities, human capital, management capabilities, etc. And what is the outcome of this exercise? So you need to wonder, what are you offering today and what can you offer if you make these adjustments, if you make these tweaks, if you have these simulation optimization capabilities, you might realize that probably you are able to offer some other products with more success, some other services. You might be able to service some other markets, some other customers in other regions, in other territories, and you need to be able to reevaluate and to reveal your value proposition. In order to do this, of course, you need to do all kinds of required analysis, the financial analysis, your market and customer analysis. You need to reevaluate your internal processes, operational, customer, innovation, regulations, etc. And of course, what is related to human capital, IT, and organizational capital. In a word, you can evaluate your supply chain in order to make some changes in the overall strategy. Once you have the capabilities to analyze your constraints, this is why you need technology. You need to be able to evaluate the financial impact in order to define and design new products, new projects under a changing environment that might probably require some adjustments and changes on your criteria of evaluation of your corporate strategy. In a nutshell, what I wanted to share with you today, it is, number one, that the global economy is projected to recover in 2021, and you must be prepared. All of us need to be prepared. This is going to come back eventually, and we need to be ready to take advantage of the new opportunities. You need to frequently map your supply chain and be ready to manage customer demands. And let me tell you something, customer demands are going to be definitely more intensive they are going to be stronger, they are going to be more demanding, if you allow me the term. You should take advantage of existing technologies. I just highlighted a couple of them in terms of optimization and simulation, the concept of supply chain tower of control, because this is the only way where you will be able to face your challenges. No matter how, you need to be prepared to start working in a way in the digital transformation of your supply chain processes, and in that way entering into the supply chain 4.0 era. And finally, with the adoption of this new vision of supply chain, you could have an excellent way of closing the gap between strategy and execution. You need to be able to probably identify some opportunities with this reshaping of your supply chain in order to question and in order to redefine what your business model is and what your corporate strategy can be as a new way of succeeding in addressing the new challenges that all of us are experiencing. With that, I want to thank you for attending this webinar. And of course, I think there is some room for questions. I will be more than glad to answer your questions. And of course, here's my contact information if you want to discuss in more detail. I would be really flattered to get in contact with you. Thank you very much.
Alejandro, we have some questions in the chat. Can you give some additional comments about closing the gap between strategy and execution, please?
Yes, of course. Yeah, no, definitely the main idea, and as I said, this is probably a disrupting thought, is that this is the time probably to wonder if reshaping some of the supply chain management processes that we have in place could probably be a good way of rethinking our corporate strategy. Let's say, for example, in terms of territories, of new customers, of international expansion. I have been in the middle of projects where we implement supply chain optimization and simulation strategy, initially with the objective of, I would say, getting better results, reducing costs, and improving service levels for customers. And we have realized that with those capabilities, if the company was just serving, let's say, the automotive sector, they would be able now to serve the metal mechanic sector, or let's say some other discrete manufacturing sectors, because they would be able to get faster to markets. They would be able to identify the location of some distribution facilities close to other manufacturing plants. They would be able to optimize warehousing management operations inside the distribution facilities, for example, in terms of improving the value-added services like kitting, assemblies, sub-assemblies, packing, unpacking, labeling, etc. And that's when you start wondering if you have the capabilities to probably start addressing some other market opportunities, and in that way reshaping your business and your corporate strategy. This is what I mean by closing the gap between execution and strategy. Not only going with the traditional approach of starting with strategy and then going all the way down to execution, but today, more than ever, starting with execution, addressing what is the specific short-term opportunity, what is the low-hanging fruit, and then probably start reshaping and rethinking your corporate strategy. That would be my approach on this.
Thank you, Alejandro. Carlos asked you, what are the two most important steps to start the transformation of supply chains?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think supply chain transformation is not the transformation of your processes. And digital transformation is not the transformation of your IT capabilities. it's probably the transformation of your overall business. And that means people, processes, technology, organization in general. And I would say that probably the first condition is to have the executive will or executive desire to do so, and acknowledge that your company needs transformation. That's number one. And number two is that if we believe that we are going to find all the answers inside the organization, I think the probability is low. I think we can find most of the answers, but we need professional help. And I think the assistance of an experienced team that can facilitate the identification of the right situation in the company and the right capabilities in order to build a specific roadmap for that company is going to be critical. So those would be my specific two, I would say, preliminary conditions. And of course, every single exercise goes from there.
Thank you. We have time for one last question. So I might ask you, I have a couple of areas where the leverage of the supply chain management in our business can be reevaluated. What will it take to start with the process?
Well, as I said, Liz, definitely, I think a good way would be to start with I would say with an assessment of the general situation and where they see the opportunities. This is specific to every single company, and of course, I think to be honest, a good way to start with this would be to contact on strategy and probably start engaging into some discussion that, of course, doesn't require any specific commitment at the beginning, but that can enlighten the way of how we can help companies to develop their specific roadmap to take advantage of the processes in supply chain management that they can leverage and that they can develop and enhance in order to probably finding the new ways of succeeding and new ways of facing the challenges that this very, very unexpected, very unusual situation is bringing to all of us. That would be my opinion.
Thank you, Alejandro. We are closing this webinar. I don't know if you want to share one last reflection to close this.
No, just want to thank everybody for attending. I know that this has been just a short time to reflect about this topic that has many different angles to analyze. And of course, once I share with the attendees my contact information, I will be more than happy. I think most of these ideas that I have shared today have come from the field, from the discussions and the engagements that I have had with different customers. And of course, I would be more than proud to get into contact with different participants into this webinar and take this just as a first step as taking off a discussion that probably can be beneficial for all of us. Thank you very much again for attending.
Thank you to you, Alejandro, and thank you to all for joining us today. We hope that you can join us in our next webinar. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you for joining us on this webinar. For any further questions, please contact us at contact@on/strategy.com.